Hi folks, Steven and I are back with one of these pack reviews for the Mists of Memory cycle, and it's pack 2, Children of Summer. Hello Steven, by the way.
Hello. It's a nice sunny day here in Sydney, so I'm ready to get through this pack.
Yeah, we'll be doing these reviews more often now because the release schedule has quickened a little bit, so we get a pack every 2 months basically, and that's also a reason why we will change the format a little bit this time. So we're not going to look back at the previous released chapter pack, the True Telling, because it's not been out for very long, and basically the cards have not really established themselves to really pass any kind of judgment on them. So we're just going to focus on the next one for the time being, and then in our next review we'll look at pack 1 when we have a little more distance. And this is the release article, so you know the drill. So this is where you can read a bit of flavor about the pack. It's good reading usually, so I would recommend it. And you can also find the files for download, so for printing at home or for having them printed professionally. And I will, of course, as usual, put a link to this release article in the description of this video. And we can have a look, of course, card by card. So the second chapter pack in Mists of Memory cycle, and we have 20 of them as we had in the previous one, so 2 for each faction and 4 neutrals. So Steven, basically we see a lot more resemblance to the old FFG packs here as well. So basically every faction gets a character and a non-character, and there's a spread of all the card types here like we used to have. So a bit different than some of the previous releases, like Hear My Words, for instance, where it was focused on some card types rather than others.
Yeah, this was always the intent, where there will still be those in the unreleased category. We still have the tapestries to release, which is something common amongst them all. But for everything else, we had always intended to do it like this. I would like to point out though that there actually isn't a consistent structure of characters and other card type in this pack, because we have one faction that has 2 characters. We can get into that later if you want. But for the most part, it will be following the FFG structure. So yeah.
Yeah, even in FFG times, it was not always for every faction in every pack a character and a non-character. They had a few exceptions here and there, so I think this is a pretty decent copy so far.
There was even one scenario, I believe, where I think it was Night's Watch actually got 3 cards for some reason.
Yeah.
I know that always bugs you.
Yeah, they have one card more than all the others. I think it was one of the early packs, like No Middle Ground or something like that. Very early in the game, they had an extra. I don't know what went wrong. I can guess that maybe it wasn't planned that way, and then one of the cards had to be abandoned for some reason that happened during playtesting. I don't know. I was not part of that, but I'm just speculating. And now we have a bit of a mess. It hurts me a little bit, but okay, can get over that. Okay, so we'll go through each faction, and so that we don't always start at the same time, we'll have Steven randomize the order a little bit.
All right, let's spin the wheel of Thrones. And first up, we have so close to Martell, but no, we have Lannister going first.
Yes, okay. So Lannister has a new version of Tywin Lannister, so this is a card that I've talked about quite a bit.
Your favorite card.
Yeah, along with Roose Bolton, perhaps in the playtesting for this whole cycle, and it's gone through some changes, but basically it's always been this gain power for having gold mechanic. It was just on one hand nerfed a little bit, so went to 3 gold now for every 3 gold in your gold pool, and has a limit. But the body got stronger in the meantime, so it's now a Tricon with Intimidate. And if you Okay, I'm thinking of this always as a kind of a combo card because you do want to get a bunch of power and close the game potentially with that, but also if you just treat it as a consistent sort of renown and play a deck that is bound to spend 4 gold, for instance, in the challenges phase for your Hound or Painted Dogs or whatever else you have, then he should basically be a Tricon with Intimidate and Renown. Just by himself, right?
Yeah, and we with this one here, we had a very consistent scenario of comparing him to Core Tywin for the body itself. Being a 7-cost Tricon, obviously Lord and all that. It's the first thing that everyone wanted to do, and then additionally with the ability, he was compared to Core Viper quite a bit because it's a very similar idea. In playtesting, as you said, the reaction for quite a while was just a little bit too strong. I believe it was initially just after you win when he's participating, gain 1 power for every 2 gold in your gold pool without a limit, I think, when it started. And as time went on, we thought to strip that back. We noticed differences between Core Viper was that Tywin can do it whilst he's defending, but at the same time, it's also limited. But more importantly, the actual resource you're basing your power gain off doesn't change with this ability. So something like the amount that you win strength by, that's based on the actual challenge itself. It's contained within the challenge. Gold in your gold pool is just sitting there. So we noticed issues where we were making the ability a little bit too easy because you're just doing what you already were doing whilst by having gold in your gold pool. And so in the end, we ended up switching it out a little bit to focus a bit more on being a stronger body with that Intimidate, something that the Core Tywin doesn't give you. And I wouldn't be surprised at the moment if he's shot just under Core Tywin, possibly. I know you might have a different opinion, but I'm keen to see how it actually plays out over the next coming months, see how aggressive he can get,
Yeah, so we have the World Cup being played as we record this, and some of the cards are being played in that event, and we can refer to that a little bit. And we're just playing, as we speak, our game or our match against Hungary, that of course has Marton, who is one of the top Lannister players, and his Lanny Crossing deck does play this Tywin, which is interesting. Most players basically are saying, okay, as good as this might be, we're not dropping Core Tywin. But Marton has decided to do that. I don't know, maybe just trying to be interesting, or maybe he genuinely thinks he can do something with it. So we still have that game to be played. I think it's 2 days from now. But yeah, as a closer, he has some potential, and you can see why someone would try to play him in rush deck. And so one thing that we have not mentioned that I would also like to say for this card, in case someone overlooked it, he does not, of course, spend the gold for his reaction. So you can win a challenge, trigger, let's say you're keeping 9 gold, that may be a bit excessive, but still is kind of realistic. You can get your 3 gold and then you can spend it for other cards that you potentially want to pay for in the challenges phase.
Yeah, and that's the one because there were a lot of comparisons between Core Tywin and Core Viper. That was the one major difference we noticed between him and Core Viper, was that you're not depleting a resource, you're not paying a cost, even though you technically aren't with Viper either, but you're paying a challenge commitment cost with the amount of strength you put in. This one, you don't really have to do that because you can just spend the gold afterwards.
All right, and then we have for Lannister a cat attachment, Boots. So the third in the cat series. And
my partner has been the most excited about this card, especially the artwork.
Yeah. Looks nice. He's about to drop that off the table, right? As cats do.
Of course. Yeah. No, we actually had This one was actually a friend of one of the people in the art team. She offered to do this artwork for free, which was amazing. Just because she had this little cute idea of him knocking over the crown off the table. I think it turned out so well.
Yeah, it looks great. So he continues the same theme as the other cat, so absolutely identical play restriction, basically unique character with printed cost 3 or lower, and has the same ambush 1. So goes on the chards, the unique chards, which you can kind of Voltron if you're really creative with the cat attachments, and this one gives them renown, which of course can be crucial on characters like Angui the Archer, who can do multiple challenges. And in Lannister, we've had for some time the 3-cost Myrcella, who often can participate in multiple challenges, but it's not so easy to give her renown. There was Florian and Jonquil for a while, but yeah, this could be permanent renown for a character like that. And just today I was watching one of the games in the USA versus France pairing where Gunther had Sir Pounce and Boots with, I think Casterly Rock was in play at some point as well, but got discarded. And was, just had a moment of dominance there with the cats, and was interesting to see. So my personal opinion, I thought when I read this that this would be too strong. It's a way too easy source of renown, but having played it and having seen it a little bit, I may have overreacted there, because after all, the little characters are not usually the ones that you want to get a bunch of power on, because it's not so reliable that it's going to stay there. So I think that's, like with all the cats, kind of a balancing mechanism, although you would have to say probably that Sir Pounce is above the curve, really. But the other two are kind of okay. I think we got it right with this one.
Yeah, I think I agree. And it's the sort of scenario where it's going to be really strong when you're comboing with the other cats, but that's sort of the point. And by that point, you're investing at least like 3, maybe 4 cards into making this like really, really strong. By that point, that's just a combo. That's not really a broken card. That's a combination of cards that should work together. So I reckon, yeah, this design was suggested straight away. There were some more complicated ones that were also suggested, but this one just took the cake for just being the most direct ability to add to the cat, the cataverse here. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out as well.
Yeah, and I noticed the other day also that one of the events that was played in person in Germany, hopefully I don't misinform you as to what event it was. Just a second. I think it was King at the Wall, and it was won by Leonard Paga, the world champion, and he played Lanny Kohor, which is a deck. We've seen Lanny Alliance with Kohor, but just plain Lanny Kohor not so much, and I have no idea really. I have not seen the list, but I would not be surprised if it was partly if Boots was a big part there to get the renown, because they have 2 renown attachments, Lannisters. They have the Shield of Lannisport, which is really awkward, and then they have the Warden of the West, which also so far has not seen that much play. But this one is a limited number of characters it can go on, but it's such an easy source of renown and so tradable with, for instance, with Sir Pounce as well. You can just start with Pounce straight into this, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Lannister continuing with getting good cards. Hardly had a bad one in the last few packs. What are we looking at next?
All right, spin the wheel, and we have... just missed out on Baratheon, sorry. We have Greyjoy.
Okay, so Ralph Kenning. So do you want to start with Ralph? It's a champ card, so you can tell us a little bit how that process went.
Yeah, so Marty, he'd given us this ability quite early. I met up with him in Starlek in 2022, I believe it was. Oh, 2020. No, it was last year's Starlek, 2023. No,
No.
2022.
Yeah,
Sorry, that
the
is
one
right.
before, yeah.
Yep. Apologies. Yep. Time flies by clearly, and we started the conversation on what he'd like to do. And he mentioned early on that he wanted to um, support the reserve and choke themes in Greyjoy. I was like, that's cool. Give us your idea. A few days later, he pretty much sent it over. It was very similar to what you see here, although it was notably a lot stronger. It was 4 for 4 by con and didn't have the winter constraint. Over time with testing, though, I think we actually started testing it at 3 strength, just because it was a little bit over, but that's okay. Over time, we during development we tested it. It just kept being too efficient in just a regular Greyjoy deck rather than the decks that should be choky. That's why we had that winter condition added. So now it's a strong card for that deck. Yeah, he also was very quick with the design, with the image as well. It's depicting himself as Ralph Canning.
Yeah, I think everyone can recognize that. Yeah, so this is his 2017 win, basically. This is the design for. So that's he won that one with Tyrell, actually, but he has another one coming with that he won with Greyjoy in that event that you mentioned. And of course, he played last year. He played Greyjoy Winter, made top 8, was the best Greyjoy, and without Ralph. So basically, it enhances a deck that already was strong. And yes, I think okay, has the winter condition, but kind of you were probably going to do that anyway. Okay, you can play him in normal Greyjoy Filthy if he didn't have that condition, which is a bit much. But yeah, the choke deck. And we've seen in the World Cup this being the most popular choice now for Greyjoy. I think there's 8 of them out of 19 teams. It's overtaken Filthy quite comfortably. However, not winning everything. Won 5 of the 8 games in the first round. So it's not just an auto win. And I have my game tomorrow that looks like it's a bad matchup. So might not enjoy that one. But yeah, so the Harris situation I need to mention is the one thing that holds him back a little bit. So I think he's undercosted quite a lot. He's like a 6-cost character for me with this ability, or at least a 5-cost character. Basically has a Botley Crew ability that is on a character, on a body that is savable. You can dupe it and has more icons, has pillage, which can make some kind of difference, and good traits. And he would be a little more difficult to carry through the Harris, but already it's a little bit awkward because the key characters in Greyjoy always, even in Greyjoy Winter these days, seem to be 7-costers, and this guy can survive the Harris with another 6-coster, which at the moment mainly is Gorold. There's some versions of other characters that are 6-cost, but even the deck that Marty Foss plays mainly has the 7-costers, and he chose them for the World Cup as well. So it's a little bit weak to the Harris, but other than that, really strong so far, and potentially problematic. I guess we'll see. We've been there before, right? With the Crag, which was just crazy in, let's say, 2 weeks after it was released, and now not a single copy in the World Cup. So we'll see what happens with Ralph. Maybe slight overreaction, but perhaps not. It seems pretty reliable.
Yeah, I feel you hit the nail on the head with saying that Greyjoy Winter, it was already a good deck. It might not have been absolute S tier best Greyjoy deck, but it was a good deck. In Starlek, it was piloted by a really good player as well, and this is just a good card being added to a good deck. I don't believe it's Ralph that's causing the deck to be a problem. It's the combination of everything. And I would also like to see how it plays out, because there are a lot of scenarios where strong card gets added to the deck, it becomes a flavor of the month to play it because it's just got a high win rate. But then over time, people start to figure out how to kit against it, how to beat it, how to actually verse it, when previously they weren't accounting for it. So I'd be interested to see if the deck and I know Ralph will stick around in that deck, but if the deck itself will stick around as being S tier, or if people will start to use some of the tools available to take care of it.
Yeah, and I think in the long run, if it is a problem, it's not so difficult to fix with the restricted list, because basically just separate him from the agenda, which is a source of choke, right? And then you are free to play winter plots with a different agenda in Greyjoy, which honestly we have not really seen, or at least I don't remember. Stark you see, right, in non-winter, just play the winter plots anyway, but in Greyjoy not so much.
Yeah, either that or you just lower the efficiency of the whole deck by getting rid of some of the other elements with the agenda, and you let Ralph be played with the agenda, but then you take away some other resources like Widow Not So or Night Flyer or something like that, just to bring the whole deck down. Yeah, there's multiple choices in the future, but personally, I would like to see how it plays out a little bit more. There's been a lot of reaction right at release, and usually that isn't the best time to judge, what should be done, because there's a lot of movement happening.
Yeah, exactly. I think even FFG had this policy, not sure if it was official or not, that you leave the cards alone a few months after they're released, not restrict them immediately. So one last thing with Ralph, I've written it here in the FAQ, by the way. Every card you can find the rules FAQ on ThronesDB if there's something that you're wondering about. If there's something that's not answered here, let us know and we'll try our best. The text says reduce the income and reserve values, which really should be gold value. I don't know how that happened. I mean, we know what the income value is supposed to mean, and even you could argue that it does mean that. So it's not a problematic text, but just for the sake of consistency, hurts my head a little bit, and I have to apologize because I was basically responsible for this fuck up. So sorry about that, but happens, I guess.
We're both responsible, and it's not a big deal. So it's a very small mix up, but income gold, it refers to the same thing.
Okay, and the other card, I guess, doesn't need that much talk, so it's Old Captain. One of these non-unique chads that we basically was not a popular card type for the past few years, but now with releasing cards in a FFG type cycle like this, there is room for cards like this. And Old Captain, perfect example. So basically has keywords if he's standing, which means he won't have them if he's participating in a challenge in normal circumstances, but you can do stuff with him. So obviously you could play every captain is a king, which makes captains not kneel, and then they have the keywords. But honestly, I don't think anyone will really seriously be trying that. Basically, he's just there as a two-cost Bicon, which in Greyjoy sometimes they're not that easy to find. There's some Harlow Bicons that recently were released that they don't have the traits that you want really, so they're looking lately for Raider, Ironborn, always popular, Drowned God obviously. Whereas this one, he's a captain and an Ironborn, which is decent enough. However, competing with Saltcliffe Sailor and with Orkmont River, I don't know. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, when we first started off with this card, the intention was looking at some of the captain tech that hasn't really been touched too much, and just providing a very cheap chart to support those. You've got Maiden's Bane, and you've got every captain is a king. There are a few other cards that this could work with, but those are like the two primary ones, I would say. And on release, or was always going to be aware that this was going to be not really a very popular card, but it's one that can act as a baseline for future cards being built based around that captain trait, and more specifically with them standing in some capacity. So I do believe we shot a little bit under what we wanted to get with this one, but at the same time, that's okay because it gives us room to support it in the future. I don't really see many. I can't really see many people playing this card with every captain is a king, but it is still a fun thing to do if you know it's more of a fun thing rather than a competitive thing. So yeah, I'm still really happy with the intention and the direction. I think we just undershot it slightly.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe in the future someone will try. We've seen with Eric, the Unwill Breaker, basically in Mammer's Farce, where you need the fools to have all the keywords and then you manipulate it with Shagwell a little bit, which you can do in Greyjoy. Okay, now they have trouble with the restricted list, basically ruining Mammer's and Saltcliffe Sailor interactions, but if this guy potentially you can keep him standing, right? If he's giving everyone else keywords, which you can achieve with a bit of creativity, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's Lannister and Greyjoy, which
also, if it wasn't obvious, Greyjoy is the faction that had two characters in this pack. For reference, we did that because when Richard and I were first setting up this cycle, we had a look at all the different card types that each faction had, and there were some very obvious, like Greyjoy had more locations than everyone else because of the warships and different things like that. But we noticed Greyjoy specifically were incredibly under on characters, which can potentially be the reason for but the good stuff bomb decks being so prevalent because there just aren't really many other options with such a bit of a smaller character pool. It's not the whole reason, but I feel like it's a very tiny reason. And so we thought we may as well we'll add one extra character to Greyjoy compared to everyone else. This is the pack that catches up with that.
Yes, I did know that information, that Greyjoy had fewer characters than the others, so I'm going to tell you something really embarrassing now. Sometimes when I'm on a bus or something and with nothing to do, I play a little game in my head where I name every single card, official card, released for a particular faction, and I have memorized Baratheon, Stark, Tyrell, and Greyjoy, so that I can name all of their 153, I think now, cards pretty reliably, and I knew that I need to always get to 78 with Greyjoy's characters, whereas with the others it's mostly 82 or 83, so...
Jeez, that is dedication.
Yeah, just something to pass time.
Gosh. That's impressive. That's like a lot of cards you got to remember. I don't remember, like, when I close this screen, I'm going to forget what's in this pack.
Yeah, I mean, you can... once you do it, let's say 3 or 4 times, you kind of know the pattern, right? You can see how one card follows the other, basically, if you go by cost. But okay, you can try that if you like, people, but not mandatory. So, what are we doing next?
To save us time, I've already started the spin, and it's Night's Watch.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So we have Highborn Recruit, which is another in the series of their one-cost characters. They have more than the other factions, except maybe, I think, Targaryen also has some. And this one, so they have Builder at the Wall and Steward at the Wall, with, of course, the Builder and the Steward traits, respectively. Whereas this one is just an ally and recruit, so doesn't fit into any of their traits, basically, which is, I guess, some kind of compensation for being just an excellent character on setup. And the ability, are we using this? I guess we could, right?
Yeah. As in, is this an ability that can be used? I'm not sure what you mean.
I'm thinking, do you play this guy and then he dies? Or do you play him and then you need him to give someone insight or renown? I think you could in the right deck. So if you play, let's say, an Aloof and a Par deck with Jon Snow and with Great Ranging, so the problem is you need one or fewer challenge icons. So it doesn't fit everywhere. It doesn't fit in some places where you would obviously need and take renown. you need to look for it. So the 6-cost Jon Snow, for instance, the core one, he participates a lot, right? And he can take renown.
Yeah, yeah, and that's in playtesting. I actually played around a lot with this and Sentinel Stand, and that was the exact character that I was working with. Where um, just having him around and having an entire board of monocons, you can utilize this card, Sentinel Stand, and a few other of the monocon techs, and it was really hard to like defend against. Surprisingly, you just had insane strength and a bunch of keywords on attack. I've just rarely seen core Jon Snow played, and that was a really nice experience. So this card definitely helped with that. And as you said, it's a 1-for-1. It's a 1-1 monocon character. It's amazing for setup. Like if it doesn't have one of the three major traits, but that's okay, I think, because it's not really pushing for any of those sort of themes. Um, yeah, I think it should. I feel like it hit the mark on what we wanted to hit, what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I guess you could. So it's not unique. You could have two of them and then give John both keywords. I'm just thinking if there's someone else. So the really dominant characters in Night's Watch, like the ones I mentioned, and Sam Tarley and Bone Marsh and guys like that, Corin Halfhand. Not that many monocons in there, so you'd have to go for Crester
Yeah.
and Thor and Smallwood and something like that. If you want to
Yeah.
have a prominent body where this fits, but you could just ignore all of that. Just play, like you said, Sentinel Stand. So the entire deck with just monocons and grab some renown here and then if you wanted to. Or even honestly, if he does nothing, he's just a guy for setups and he's a guy that does a power challenge if nothing else. So.
Yeah, and he does share. There is also Pip who does a similar thing, at least in the deck that I was playing and playtesting, to give someone insight when they're standing. So this also filling the renown hole there. You do also have other cards like Longclaw, but this just adds more flexibility. And I did actually notice one scenario where Highborn Recruit was triggered on himself and then stood with Shadow of the Wall, which I found hilarious. So
Well,
apparently that's also a combo you can do, but it's not really doing much, is it?
well, if it brings Shadow of the Wall into the game, that would be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. I guess it's an insight on a 1-by-1 character, so you can't complain too much.
And then we have Insubordination, which is also an interesting card that I have put in my deck for the World Cup, so I'm stuck with Night's Watch this year. And Valyrian Steel, obviously, you can have a bunch of attachments, single copy, and it's easy to include it, even though you don't know exactly how it will perform, what it will do in actual games. But not a huge opportunity cost, basically, to put one copy in. And so far, actually, so some people were saying before it was released, why would you play this since Craven is so obviously better? But it's been interesting. So I think slightly disappointing in some sense. Not hugely impactful in games, but then on small boards where there's let's say not all the icons represented, you can make use of this. I would prefer it if it wasn't terminal. I mean, fair enough. If it's killing people, then once it kills someone, it should go. But if the character leaves play through other means, which happens unfortunately a little too often for my liking, then you lose it, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, on small boards and on certain characters that kind of want to do a challenge alone, it is interesting. However, I'm not sure. I think the Craven argument basically is valid if you're not playing Valyrian Steel where you have limit once per deck, then you'd need 3 Cravens first, and then if you're still not satisfied with the amount of control, then you go for insubordinations, right? Is there any reason you would play it before a Craven?
Yeah, this for context, this card here was a little bit more of a thematic one, but like, at least when it was first designed. But it was mechanically aimed for a slightly different route than something like Craven. 'Cause Craven's just flat out blocking, attacking. This one's more of a threat. And we actually saw it do quite well alongside, I think it was a banner Tyrell actually, using some of the, like a wall of roses, for example, to surprise kill someone. Um, but I do agree that mechanically, if your intention is to sort of choke the board, choke who's attacking, I guess, then Craven is definitely going to do a better job. But also keeping in mind that Craven itself is also a very strong card. Um, if you're designing a card that has a similar intention and you intend it to be better than Craven, it's probably going to end up on the restricted list pretty quickly. So I'm not too upset if this shoots under Craven because it does also have some slightly separate applications that it could be used for where it is better than Craven. They're just not. It's just not really there yet, but it has the potential to be.
Yeah, I think you could argue that this is what Craven could have been, right, if it wasn't a bit crazy. So Craven basically got on the restricted list way back in the day, and it's still kind of lingering in there, on and off, basically, depending on
Yeah.
how well wall defense does, and sometimes in a pod, I think with Haunted Forest. Not sure what the situation is right now, but Craven was yeah, better than it should have been, possibly. Whereas this is more fair, but then if Craven does exist, then yeah, it overshadows Insubordination a little bit. But it's been interesting, and we'll see. I have 5 more games at least to play, I think, in the tournament, and I'll tell you later if Insubordination has ever killed anything.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's. I would say it was definitely undershot, but at the same time, it wasn't. I don't think we should have made it stronger than this, just because it can easily become a slippery slope with these sort of cards. I do, as I mentioned before, I do like that it is quite a thematic card, referencing Janos Slint's insubordination and uh, him thinking that he had allies and then he didn't. Uh, really reflects that quite well.
Okay, so that's 3 down, right? What do we have next?
Next, we have wheel spin. Come on, Martell. Oh, listen to me. We got Martell.
Okay,
All
so
right.
the Old Hawk.
Yes.
Slightly surprising in the World Cup, with this guy out, so many teams deciding to just play Martell Knights of the Hollow Hill. But this guy is in 1 or 2 decks, and not surprising, of course, that those are the decks that play the Lords and Ladies, so Cordoran usually, to boost
Yeah.
everyone's strength, and then you get Mass Renown on a character just as a constant, and also a thing that I'm looking forward to seeing, so I'm always a bit pessimistic because it's been years, but the Green Blood, the Martell location that boosts everyone's strength just by playing Summer. So it's another Summer reference. We've seen a few of those, and
Yeah.
there's one here in the FAQ as well that's coming that deals with Summer plots a little bit. Uh, will this guy make them playable? I've seen him in play, so not in the World Cup, but just casually on the Iron Throne, and it's like maybe not round 2 or round 3, but once you reach that threshold, basically just instant win because 1 to the spears and half your board has renown, or the majority of your board, and then you put 5 in one challenge, all standing, 5 in another challenge, and it's game over, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This was a card that I was actually worried this would be busted. But I got reassurance from a lot of non-Martell people, or not a lot, a few non-Martell people in the design team that it was actually okay. And that a 6 cost character providing something like this makes sense. Um, I I have seen him a little bit around. I unfortunately haven't had much time. I've been a bit busy. Haven't had much time to play a lot of competitive games. But I have seen him in quite a few casual games, in like aloof decks and all that. And he seems to be performing quite well. There was the intention for him to work well with cards like Song of Summer, I think it is, and Greenblood. But I feel like, especially in the case of Greenblood, that's going to be a little bit more of a comical thing, just because Greenblood itself is hard to support. Just it feels a little bit overcosted for what it's doing, but with the more summer tech that we have like this, the better that sort of card and this sort of card will be. I think he turned out quite well. He might be slightly on the stronger side, but sometimes we get that with 6 characters.
Yeah, and there is an upcoming card. This one, not sure how you pronounce it, Nymeria of Nisar, I guess. That
Yep.
is one of these types 3 locations, or attachments, I should say. And basically gives potentially, in some circumstances, right, you can give a +1 after you win a challenge. So if you have a bunch of characters that are just under that threshold on 5 strength, and then revealing a summon gives you +1 across the board, yeah, it's a threat that needs to be addressed, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So I can see him getting. The reason I say he's a little bit over, I think right now he's okay, but I could see him getting a little bit stronger when cards like Nymeria of Neosar come out, or if there are future cards that interact with the summer trait. It just makes him so much more prevalent, a lot more reliable. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. The art was good as well.
Yeah, I should say, I was thinking when I said strength 5, just under the threshold, of course, plots like cards like Greenblood, or the plot you mentioned, Song of Summer, but just you could already have 6 strength and just not have the summer plot, right? He needs that condition, and
Yeah,
then it turns into Master Renown that way. It's also
yeah,
a possibility. Although I guess if you're going to play that particular attachment, then you don't get like an extra plot deck that you get with drains. You'd need to have summers in there. So I don't know how, if you're realistically having a lot of non-summers that you then flip out of. I don't know. I guess we'll see that when it comes out. Looking forward to it.
yeah. Me too.
The Throne of Dawn.
Yes, next one.
So, what do we have here? So it's a really bad Iron Throne that works from losing dominance and not winning. But it does do stuff. Okay, so you can put cards in shadows. So careful, doesn't give them the shadow keyword. It's like Edric basically. So you either need to use it on cards that have shadows printed, or you use it in combination with cards that can bring those cards into play. And we've had that theme a little bit recently in Martell. So Duran Martell, the latest one, 6 cost, gives basically every card in shadows this keyword, so you don't need to worry about it. He himself, of course, can put cards in shadows without giving them the keyword, so you can basically amass a lot of them in shadows with this combination. And also Traitor's Whisper has recently been released. Well, recently, it's a while now. That for a very reasonable cost can bring something out of shadows, even way more expensive than 2 usually. And
Yeah,
there's some value there. And plus reserve, okay, decent Martell theme. However, requires you to lose dominance, which of course means you're conceding 1 power to the opponent unless you have the other stuff that interacts with that.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Have you played this?
I played a little bit. Now with this card here, we were initially treading a bit of a line of trying to not make sure that it wasn't a card that was amazing for recursion. Obviously, it can still recur Shadows cards, but the timing of it is really awkward. Meanwhile, the cards like Clever Feint can do it within the challenges phase, which then you can bring out other Shadow cards. The intention for this one was more of a safety mechanism for characters that you sort of want to keep safe during the plot phase. So you're losing dominance, bringing them to shadows, and then for any sort of reset that you have going on, you have one less character or one less card you have to worry about. Um, that was the initial intent, not necessarily for recursion. With that intent in mind, I think it hits the mark. Uh, but as you said, at the moment, losing dominance is still not as easy. It sounds crazy, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Um, Especially in scenarios where um, you don't have enough icon removal to keep someone standing, for example, to force yourself to lose dominance. So you do have Shadows Ariane for that. It just requires a lot of moving parts to make this card worthwhile. So that's where we added that +1 reserve. So at least it's providing you something as a baseline for 2 gold. And then if you have the tech to continuously lose dominance, you're getting a card back into Shadows each turn. And it's definitely always 1 card as well, which is good. Yeah, this is actually a suggestion, I believe, by I might be misquoted. I think it was Andrej had suggested this one a while ago, and we finally decided to run with it. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, so basically, if this was a Lannister card, it would be pretty crazy because of all the effects when cards come out of Shadows. Martell is a little bit, let's say, not as dangerous with that. There's no Robert Strong-like card really in Martell. It's a little bit more constructive. I guess Southland Messenger doesn't have Shadow, right? Have to ambush that.
No.
Yeah. We have,
but it is still an interplay effect, and you do also have Starfall Spy as well. I think you missed that one.
Yes, a scheming snake recently released has an effect, but it's not anything crazy. So just to put characters into shadows to reuse them is not so crazy in Martell really. But yeah, it's. I mean, this card is here to stay, so anything that's printed in the future, and I think there are plans to explore shadows a bit more, will make it stronger.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Right, shall we move on to the next one? Let's see what we got. Spin the Wheel of Thrones. All right, we're getting into neutrals now.
Oh, okay, so we're right in the middle, so that fits just fine. And we have this guy. I want to say Jalabak Saw, but
Yeah,
not exactly sure.
I think it's Zalabarzo, but again, I'm also not certain, based on how the audiobook sounds.
Okay, so the ability is it reminds me a little bit of the one cost Braun in Lannister, so you can pass this guy around a little bit, marching action with no limit. But and he is a Tricon with strength more than he costs. Okay, you're probably, if you're stealing him, you didn't pay the cost in the first place, but okay. But it's an interesting mechanic, so you need to discard power from your faction card, which means it's if you imagine mid-game where one player has 5 and the other has 4 and they discard all of their power, I don't think you would do that, but who knows, maybe some games can be decided by a little bit of strength and a little bit of having the right icon at the right time. I don't know, but I have not really seen him in play yet, so I think people are not willing to gamble on him just yet.
Yeah, I have seen some scenarios more in playtesting. I did see it in one live game where he's actually stalling out some games because, as you just said, there are becoming scenarios where people are just fighting for him. Where they're both 2 players were both at 5 power, and they both went down to 0 power just to take control of him. So there are scenarios where that's happened, but in a competitive environment, I can see that it's a bit too much of a risk. You being the player that's playing him, you sort of need to put him out for a reason because you are technically going to be paying more than your opponent if they steal him with a power, because you're paying the 2 gold cost, and then you might have to pay a power to take him back if your opponent wants to steal him. So unless if you have a reason to have him there, he might not be worth it. I think the most notable thing about him is that he is a 2-cost lord. So if you're able to hold on to him, he does have application there with things like Eddie Iron Throne or other, just generally other lord mechanics. There could be Marjorie Tyrell as well, 6-cost Marjorie. He does have at least other uses there rather than just being a good body.
Yeah, that's interesting. We had that with Sweet Robin, basically. People saying, okay, even if I ignore his ability, I'm going to play him if I play air, just as a cheap body, and that has happened. This guy, okay, if I'm seeing Marjorie, then I might fight for him as the opponent, right? Just for air, maybe not, but yeah, if that's the threat. And sometimes just, yeah, we've seen with former champion who is a 3-4-5 basically, and having that big strength on the military can put you under pressure in some things. This guy has it not, okay, doesn't have 5, it's 4, but not just the military, the intrigue as well, where you can get threats in range decks, for instance. So who knows, maybe he will see play.
I mean, he is also incredibly good on setup when neither player has the power to spend.
Yeah, sure, you can carry him through the opening round pretty safely. Then I guess not that big of a deal just to kill him off as well if you think, okay, there's now a realistic danger, I'm going to lose him at some point. So he's still costs, the cost is claim so cost basically, even though the stats are a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then we come to the Moondor, which is very interesting. So it's a card that not many people have explored, but one deck has. In the World Cup, a Greyjoy free companies deck that is trying to do that trick. I'm not sure if I listed it here. No. Basically using Victarion Greyjoy and some other cards. I think Stony Shore Raider can also do that on your own locations. Trying to kneel them mid challenges basically, and then you get the kill effect, so Victarion can do it on demand, and it is printed strength 3 or lower, which honestly covers a lot of the characters. So if you just think of a deck like Star Crossing, basically everything is within that range. But I don't know, so at the moment not that easy to stand this location. You'd need to use the add-in mechanics, which are not that popular. So it kind of has a natural limit, and then you can also try to play around it, kind of like burn that you can see on the board. But then if you're playing around this all the time, it basically has already done part of its job, right?
Yeah. This was a card where it's definitely a card that's going to have more application in the future. As more abilities slowly trickle out to support it. But the base is there, and the base is a threat. As you said, there is the Victarion scenario, which we were fully aware of in development. And seeing the Moondor on the board, you're going to assume that that player has a way to kneel it if they're playing it. So it just being there is going to be a threat. There are also other cards like I think it's Lay Siege as well, kneel a location, which is a surprise way to trigger it. And most characters, as you said, it's going to hit them. It does also notably hit and thematically hit 6-cost Isa, which is actually will be kind of useful for you as you kill her and then remove something from the game. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It's not as popular as we want it to be, but it's also as popular as I sort of expected it to be, at least at this time. The passive can be useful, but it's not, entirely winning games on its own. But it aligns well with the House Aaron low initiative theme. If both characters are on 0 initiative, for example, you get to choose who wins it.
Yeah, that can be important. So I've had situations playing Baratheon smugglers, basically, where you have the Prince of the Narrow Sea, which, okay, we don't need to revisit that whole discussion, but for some reason wants to lose initiative, which kind of sucks for smugglers in some ways. And then you play your Late Summer Feast or you play your Morgulis and you run into an opponent's Late Summer Feast, and if you're ahead on power, then sucks for you. You win initiative on a crucial trigger where you're not supposed to. So basically, this can make you lose it, or it can make you win initiative in some cases where it's 0-0. So it's interesting in that respect, but also dominance we should mention. So normally dominance is tied just fine, right? It's not resolved. But if the moon door is in play, means that someone will win dominance, even if it's, let's say, 0-0, everything knelt and no gold in either player's gold pool. You do need to choose someone to win dominance, and then they will get power. So there's one situation that I described here, I think somewhere. If you play a melee game and two of your opponents are on 14 and they tie for dominance, then it's not optional to resolve it. You have to make someone win in that situation. I don't know how likely it is that it will really come up in games, because dominance is so rarely exactly tied. I guess can't really count on that. But the initiative happens all the time, and really with 0. If you really want to lose it, then it will make a difference, I think.
Yeah. So it has application on its own, at least. The passive, at least, and the reaction is something that's probably going to be fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah, so far, I think everyone thinking Victarion. I mentioned the smugglers. You have Corain, who can also kneel your own location on demand if you really want it. I mean, it's you lose the control element that he provides if you do that, but you can kill on demand in that way. But really, it's an Erin card, and it would be a shame if people didn't explore the airing guide that stands locations. I want to say it's Harry the Air, maybe, or is it the other one?
Yep, Harry the Air stands locations.
So that would be.
So you do have situations where you could actually trigger this twice in one turn in one challenge as well. If you have, because House Aaron does have a few, near after you win a challenge, near location to do X abilities, and Harry is able to, in the same reaction window, stand the location. So you could have something like Harry the Air, Bronzeon. Oh, actually, Bronzeon is on defense. There is something else that I'm just missing in my head that can kneel on costs, and there might be stuff in the future as well. So you will get a benefit if you play these with House Aaron cards. I just don't think, unfortunately, the House Aaron cards are in a highly competitive tier yet, but at least the foundation's there.
Yeah, and the more there are, of course, it will eventually lead to something coherent, right? Anya Wainwood as well can kneel this, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And for a benefit, not just for something that basically hurts you in another way. You can use this on your side to put something in the challenge that benefits you in the challenge and get a kill from that as well. So, can you do that? Yeah, you can. Sure. She needs it for her ability, and this is just a reaction to being knelt. So it works perfectly.
It does. Shall we get to the next card?
Okay, then we have Southern Peace, which is very straightforward. Basically says you can do military. So in Joust it's just the two players. In melee you would choose a specific player, although in melee I'm not sure if you would play this if it's not affecting everyone. But in Joust, basically cancels military. Now let's say 5 years ago when Sea of Blood was going crazy, this would have been really nice. Not sure at the moment how needed it is. I think it was 5 gold, right, throughout some of the testing process, but it was nerfed a little bit towards the end because 5 is really generous, and some plots have been overplayed a little bit due to having good gold. And
When we went through our statistics for playtesting, because we track a little bit of on the playtesting website, this card was the most playtested by far, and so we sort of saw that as the card is a little bit too consistent, I guess, because a lot of people are finding it. Slipping one copy into your deck is very useful. It's similar to a similar concept to At the Gates on release. When that came out, pretty much everyone just put that in their deck because why wouldn't you? And so we thought to be a bit proactive here and lowered the gold from 5 to 4. And I think it was a good idea. It looks closer to what we wanted it to be.
Yeah, at the moment, I don't think it's in a great spot just because the aggro decks that you would want to stop are not that dominant right now. But it's there as an answer. And actually, I think it's the first summer plot with this edict trade that you can now play in Battle of the Trident. I don't think you could play a summer plot in that before.
Oh, actually, you might be right, actually, yeah.
Or was there a summer siege? I don't think there was, actually.
No, actually, I don't believe there is, which means, what is it? Lord Renly's Host, I think it is. Oh, Battle of the Trident, Lord Renly's Host.
Yeah, I know we were looking at. I remember obsessing about some interaction in the past. I don't know exactly what it was now, but just if I was checking if you were able to somehow manipulate summers in with that agenda. I'm not sure if it's relevant. Maybe it was for the change of plans interaction with the agenda, or for what's the other one? Yeah, no change of plans, and I guess you can have. Sand steeds now as well in that, but I don't think there's anything immediately broken. It's just interesting that basically summer has been kept away from the trident completely, even though you can have access to 3 different traits, but now you can put this in. And actually the ability is not that crazy in trident, right? You can do this to mess with your opponent either in the plot phase or in the challenges phase, basically.
Yep,
Depends
definitely.
on the order.
You either start with this, prevent military, then flip into something that allows you to do military, because it does say until you reveal a new plot card. Or you can just reveal this, do your military, reveal this, and then your opponent can't do military. It can work. Whether it's enough to make King Renly's Host good, probably not. I keep on going back to that because I did try Tyrell Battle of the Trident, and I was really sad that King Renly's Host couldn't really be used because there's just no summer options. So maybe if there's 1 or 2 more, that deck could see some new light. But I think at the moment, this card can just be okay on its
own. Okay, and the last one actually is an agenda. So sometimes we like to start with agendas because basically it's a new toy that you can look at all the other cards in the context of being able to play them with that agenda. But this one, not really. So it's quite a general ability that doesn't really interact with anything too particular. It's an interesting agenda. So it's another champ card designed by Ryan Jones. I think has a few already, right? The Iron Man could have its due. I think is one of his Faceless Man.
Yep, those are his 2 existing cards.
And so it has a downside: locations you control enter play net, which if you're going to do locations that you want, basically you don't want the tempo hit of having a round where they don't do anything. So if you can imagine something like Starfall, it sucks, right, to play this agenda and then you get cards like that basically don't work for a round. So you have to play around that little downside. But the reaction is interesting. So doesn't need the faction card. You on random discards, basically you can take the character, so either as a bit of a tempo play to then use that character in challenges, or with the intention of paying for it at the end of the phase, and then you can keep it permanently. And I think this was also, was it originally, did it work on any discard, not just random?
Yeah, so this one went through a few revisions, but Ryan was really great with working with this one. He was quite transparent in exactly what he wanted to portray. You did mention it before that there was no faction, Neil. That was by design. He wanted it to be playable with Iron Bank. so that you could use Iron Bank to help pay for the gold for this. So that's why there's some choices of, no factional, but it's limit once per phase, and we added the random discard as well. It was initially any discard, but we ran into some major problems with just point and click discard, such as Ghost of High Heart, where you're turning this agenda into always getting the best option, which wasn't really the intention. But yeah, it just proved to be a little bit too consistent. And so we added the random part. He did want this to, if I recall correctly, to reflect on the actual deck that he won with, which was a Lannister deck. And so we thought the random discard more closely fit how Lannister works with their discard, being their power and intrigue challenges, and a few other random discard cards. But yeah, so this one, I kind of like how it turned out as well.
Yeah, and the new Tywin, if you're keeping gold for his ability, then it makes it a little bit easier to, at the end of the phase, use that gold to pay for the cards you've discarded in the meantime. I've played against it in testing. Actually, it was way back when Tywin was still a little bit stronger before the nerfs, and I played against the Lannister gold price deck, and didn't really have that much stolen, but Tywin did get, I think, 7 power in one challenge on that occasion. But yeah, Lannister basically is the immediate faction that comes to mind, because they can generate gold during challenges themselves that sometimes can go to waste. The others, like you said, the Iron Bank will have its due, can basically give you quite a bit, right? If you want to use it on one of your big characters. But the other factions would need to save the gold in advance, and then if you're not getting a character, it's a bit tricky, I guess, in some ways. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what the top deck builders basically do with this. I'm not that good with that, so I'm not seeing a deck right now, but I think at some point, right?
Yeah. One thing to also note with this card is the actual artwork itself. So Ryan wanted to make sure that the artwork sort of reflected the same canonical character that his other 2 champ cards have. So you might notice that this guy looks a little bit similar to the banker in the Iron Bank and the face from the Faceless Men. So I thought that was a nice little interesting thing that he wanted to add, where it's sort of following the life of this one person, with the Faceless Men probably being later at the end of his life, I guess. And this and the Iron Bank sort of being somewhere in between. I thought that was just a nice little touch that not many people might pick up on. So, yeah.
Okay, and then we have the other 4 factions to go through.
Yep, I'm spinning the wheel now, and we have Stark going next.
Okay, and yet another champ card. So we have Ghost here, and this is is it the 4th version of Ghost already? So there's 2 attachments, right? One in Nightwatch and one in Stark, and there is a Nightwatch character. So there's no Stark Ghost, right? So this is the 4th, the 4th version, yeah.
No Stark Ghost character, yeah.
Well, basically it's a draw card, so anytime you win with an attacking direwolf, which mostly they have military icons, but realistically, if you're playing direwolf specifically, Manifest God is the most popular, which has an inbuilt way of getting them icons, of course, and Bran as well can do that on demand. There is an option for Lady on the power challenge as well, so you're not necessarily only drawing one, but yeah, most of the time you should be getting one, and it's surprisingly popular. So we've seen it even in just Stark crossing decks, and yes, for sure the direwolves. I mean, those decks kind of let's say fragile in some ways, but just getting that consistent source of draw is quite amazing. It has an interrupt, a save, like the Night's Watch attachment version of Ghost has as well, where you can save John, but honestly,
That's more flavor text, if anything.
yeah, I was just thinking you're not going to save John because I mean Stark John is not the best John. Let's be honest. So there's one coming out. We have to mention that, but the one that currently exists, I think if you're playing Ghost, you'd rather have Ghost because this ability is quite impactful. So you're not sacking him to save John. I don't think.
Yeah. The John coming out though, which were the two of them were designed in mind, might be worth saving. In some scenarios, he will be quite a strong guard once it's eventually released. Just not a bomb like the other ones.
Yeah, and so this is was designed by Chrissy. We should mention for the European meta title, and he's been playing it a little bit in the World Cup as well, but not really in a direwolf deck. So. Won't see it shine in that one, I don't think, in the crossing, but in pure direwolves, I think it's superb. So definitely a great card for Stark here.
Yeah, this is actually one of the few champ cards as well that didn't require any editations. It was quite on the mark from the get-go, which is great.
And the other, Taste the Blood.
Yep. Yes.
So this one is a little bit less, let's say, simple and more complex card with a really flashy ability. So it's an event that it requires the faction card nil, so you can't really abuse it with some of those agendas like Trident and Reigns and some other abilities. But it is a card that allows you to basically get when revealed ability during challenges. And it's not limited in any way apart from requiring an Old Gods character, which in Stark there's a few ways, right? So you have some, I think, that have the trait already, but it's extremely rare. You have the attachments that give the trait. You have Winterfell Castle, which is tricky, but it gives the trait. And we'll see, or actually we have seen already Blood Raven released that is a neutral character that has the Old Gods trait. So that part is slightly tricky. Winning Intrigue maybe not so much these days for Stark. They have, if they want to do it, they have the characters to do it. But no other limits in terms of what you can do. So you can do when revealed on your side, on your opponent's side, in either player's discard pile basically. And it can be plot with any trait. It can be an extra Morgulis if you so desire, although if you're winning challenges, maybe, I don't know if that benefits you. Can be an extra heir to the Iron Throne or something like that. So basically, you can build your deck to use this, and you can hope that your opponent gives you something as well.
Do keep in mind with the whole Valar Morghulis situation, Old Gods does have quite a good rep for saving themselves, especially with Winterfell available. So I can see this re-triggering, some really impactful plots like that. In playtesting, I playtested this one quite a bit actually, and it was surprisingly easier to trigger than I thought it would be. But it might have just been a scenario of the matchups that I got. I don't expect this one to be played a whole lot, at least right now. But it is undeniably a strong card for a theme that doesn't have a lot of support, which is partly why we were okay with it being a bit strong, because it doesn't have a lot of support, and by design and thematically, it is a bit hard to add support to Old Gods because there are so few actual things in the books to bind to. Like there's a very limited amount of entities we can focus on that relate to Old Gods without it getting a bit too out of hand. So we're happy with this. If this ends up being really strong, that's fine. But I haven't seen it personally. I don't know if you have.
I have seen it, yes.
Oh, there you go.
Had it played against me as well. Although I guess the thing is here, so Stark is really established in their two decks that they play all the time, the Filthy and the Crossing, and sometimes they go a little bit more aggro. So the old god stuff, especially with the 5-cost Winterfell Castle, is really unexplored. It's kind of been a dead end in design for a long time. So this support I think is badly needed to have this kind of flashy ability that okay maybe it will not prove that
Yeah.
consistent, but it's interesting, and that's usually what drives some people to play it. And I don't know how you approach it, like I said. So you can't rely on the opponent because I think people sometimes there's another card I think later in this cycle that also has this when revealed interaction. Um, People overestimate how many plots have a when revealed ability. Really, it's not
Yeah.
that many. There's a lot of those Winter Festival type of cards that
Yeah.
you can't use. And then if you're thinking, okay, surely my opponent will offer me something to copy, that's not. That can be a nice bonus, but that's not the thing to do. Usually, you have to prepare something in your own deck that you want to retrigger. And if yeah, like I said, just going for the basically the Stark stuff with playing air on your recon to get fast Eddie is one thing. You can replay that from your used pile or just I don't know. I mean, there's 100 plots at this point in the game, so many combinations, and yeah, it's basically a deck builder's dream. This kind of card where they can really be creative and try to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm keen to see how it plays out over the next few months as well. I want to see. I would love to see more people playing old gods, outside and steer a little bit away from the common Stark good stuff decks, which have proven to be good in itself. So yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head with saying that we wanted to bring out something that was a bit more flashy and had an interesting and strong, very clearly strong mechanic available to it. At the same time, people do overestimate where it can be used. We actually initially had this only working with your opponent's used plot pile, but then changed it to be any player. So I am also interested with this in melee because it is any player. You can trigger. You have more options on what to trigger. Um,
Yeah, I guess you can afford to count on your opponents having something in melee if there's more players. But I don't know. It usually you don't want to trust to luck in that way. But yeah, if you have, let's say if it's round 3 and you have what 7 plots, 8 plots to choose from, right? 4 players
yeah,
with 2 in the use pile. Yeah, should be getting something. And there's actually an option to have Varys' Riddle, so you can play that yourself in an early round, and then if that's in your used pile, you can use it to copy a currently revealed plot as well, which sometimes can be just as impactful.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Plus, Martell has Behest. This is loyal, and Behest, of course, can only be played in Martell decks. But if you happen to play against Martell, then you
Mm.
can copy their Behest. They will usually either play it in round 1 or round 2, and it will be in the use pile pretty early, and then you can actually reveal a new plot as if you play Drains. Uh,
Hmm.
a bit of luck, but I'm sure it will happen at some point for someone.
Yeah, all you have to do is verse Martell. It's probably in that deck.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 1 in 8, and then a bit less because not everyone plays it, but yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
them around.
All right, let's get to the next faction. I reckon.
Okay.
Spin the wheel, and we have Tyrell.
Yeah, I saw that coming. Uh, had a strong feeling that it was going to be Tyrell. And so they have a character that is a little bit bland here. Sir Parman Crane has a very simple ability. If you have another one of these Rainbow Guards, he gains renown. And actually, in our team, in our Tyrell deck for the World Cup, we play 3 copies of him. Uh,
Oh,
it's a little bit tricky because King's Guards are plenty, right? but actually Rainbow Guards, so you have Sir Gyrd Morrigan, who is never played. The two robbers are not that popular. Sir Aemon Coy basically kills himself. But Sir Bryce Caron is a Rainbow Guard character, if I remember correctly. And you do tend to play in Tyrell White Book these days. You do tend to play 3 copies, so it is potentially a source of renown. And then you have one of these relatively cheap characters. So if they try to reset you, of course, with let's say Knight of Flowers, Paristan, Sir Jaime in play, you are kind of exposed to a good to Harris, right? But this guy helps you a little bit, good for setups. So in that kind of deck, or in a Knight deck, 3 for 3 Bicon might not have renown, but then he might have it. Pretty interesting, if a little bit bland. Not my cup of tea, as you know. I don't enjoy that type of deck, but I think it's solid enough.
Yeah, and you said it earlier with Old Captain. Having a full cycle, it allowed us to bring out mechanically boring cards that were still good cards. Like I have no doubt in my mind that Sir Parman Crane is a well balanced card. It feels like it, but damn, is he boring. It's just if you have the right trait, gets renowned, becomes a really well statted body. Sometimes you need that, as you say, as you guys are seeing, I guess. That can definitely be worth it. 3 copies in your deck in that scenario. So yeah, really happy with how that turned out. Love the art as well. One of our art team members had actually gotten this commissioned for himself. Michael got this commissioned for himself years ago and has been waiting for it to potentially be used. And so we finally found a slot for it. And really happy with how the art has been for that one.
Yeah, and so we said maybe it's a little bit unfair, right, to say he's bland. So if he said, well, you control another knight, that would be really boring. But he does specifically refer to Rainbow Guards, and maybe those are a little bit underplayed. So
That's true.
You could, if you have a source of renown coming from that, could encourage you to play them a little bit more. I don't know if we'll see Sir Gyrd ever being played, or Robert. So both versions of Robert are a little bit dodgy. So one works with Summers, the other can't do challenges at the beginning, right? You have to do another challenge first or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. But the Brienne the Blue event, I think, gives +10 to Rainbow Guards if they attack alone. So that's an instant win, and it only costs 1. So I don't know. Could be a future there.
Maybe more people just need to play Rainbow Guard. I think that's what we're saying here. Get on it.
Yeah, and in the last pack we had Red Apple Knight, right? Which works with unique Tyrell Knights. So this guy is not one to copy really with his relatively low strength, but it is a team as well to keep an eye on. And any strength boosts, of course. If you boost one, you boost all the other ones as well. That's something that interests me a little bit more than just spamming knights.
Yeah.
The other one, the exact opposite. So you can see the FAQ here already that it's going to be a little bit complicated. It's a convoluted ability which actually is quite interesting. So it's a Tyrell plot with decent stats, so you could play it and not be under too much pressure to make it work. But it 3 times per round, which basically is as if it had no limit, because it's difficult to do 3 times anyway. You can, if a challenge ends and there's no one participating, that's 2 power, which is Winterfell Festival. I said it again. Winter Festival level of power, basically. And how do you do that? Well, you can. So there's characters that remove themselves after winning, for instance, like the Hound or Meg the Mighty, something like that. Or you can use the removal from challenges, so you get attacked. We've had in Tyrell since the beginning of the game, we've had High Garden, the core one. We have new cards that have emerged since, like Offer of a Pitch. We have Wall of Roses, which is a fairly recent one that removes multiple characters. And yeah, if someone attacks into this plot without, let's say, with limited number of characters, and you remove them, then challenge ends, and you get 2 power from that, which is can be pretty decent. Now, if you're doing that twice, I mean, it's tricky to do, but if you're doing it twice, that's 4 power. That's a lot of power gain.
Yeah, yeah. This was definitely a plot that we know is probably going to take a little bit to actually become useful, or become not necessarily useful, become where its interrupt is actually gaining people a lot of power. Mainly because, at least from what I've seen, there's not a lot of decks focusing on the standard move mechanic, at least not outside of 1 or 2 cards, such as Wall of Roses or Core Highgarden. So we wanted a plot that would sort of boost that theme and that theme alone, with the stats being decent on their own, because the ability is still, it's regardless of what its intention is, it's still kind of niche. But personally, I do love how straightforward it is. It's just, get people out of the challenge, you get power. It also does mean that the challenge itself would end, meaning, so if you attacked, for example, you're not actually getting the claim benefits, but instead you're getting 2 power. So you do lose out on something else. Obviously, you get the most benefit if you prevent someone from attacking you. But that might not always be the most reliable thing you can do, especially when your opponent sees that this is out. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to not do anything, unless if they really have to.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if they attack,
yeah.
if you have this reveal, let's say their first player, and they just have to pass because you're going to get power on defense like that. I mean,
Exactly.
that's their whole round gone. So
yeah. It's not. It is good that you can pass a whole round, but it also doesn't. If you pass and absolutely nothing happens, the plot actually isn't really getting you that much, unless if your intention is to stall the game. But yeah. The additional thing I wanted to mention with this one was the actual artwork itself. So this one was Diego. I'm going to butcher his name. Gisbert Lorenz. Had a good discussion with him. He actually did the artwork for Calling the Banners in first edition, and he offered free of charge to recreate it for this plot. So you might notice, you can probably add it later if you want, that the artwork looks similar to Calling the Banners. It's an event from first edition, but it is different, and it's because he completely remade the whole thing. And I thought that was absolutely incredible. That he just wanted to support what we're doing here with his time. So
yeah,
big shout out to him. That was fantastic.
I think we had a few arts from him, right, in the past.
I think so. At least not really any from us. I think could be wrong there.
I want to say maybe Golden Grow or Long Table or something like that. Let me check that.
Tattered Princess from him.
Oh, okay.
Magna of Then, and that's it. Well, and Chivalry of the South, of course.
Okay, so
but he did also do a few first edition artworks and some FFG artworks.
My memory letting me down a little bit there, but yeah, Tattered Prince.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I remember the name because it's such a distinct name. I know that I've seen it before on cards.
Yeah. But he's done other artworks like Queen of Thorns and Sir John Fossaway and Desert Raider as well. But yeah, no, so great. The artwork turned out really great. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll see how the card plays out. So Francisco in his World Cup deck is playing it, I think. He's playing Tyrell Summer, which focuses on removal from challenges. And not sure how he's doing exactly. I think he lost the first one. Not sure what happened in round 2. But it's an interesting deck. Maybe slightly too soon for it, really. It's maybe a bit more. Although, I mean, this team has been supported from basically from the core set, just not quite enough, because just removing characters from challenges without actually there's no immediate way to take advantage of that, right? It's a defensive move, so doesn't work that well. But yeah, at some point, I think cards like Mace Tyrell that we had recently, the latest one.
Yeah.
Sorry, misspelled that. Mace Tyrell. This one, you
He'll
can
definitely benefit.
This works on attack as well, right? So you can attack,
Yeah.
then remove everything, and you can remove. Let's say if it's not looking good for you, then maybe you do a bit of removal. If it's looking good, you take the win. There are also convoluted ways to take both, as we said. So you can win with the Hound, and then it ends with no participating characters in the right circumstances. There's this little interaction that has been brought up in the past with the Queen of Thorns. So if she attacks, she can win alone because she has stealth in some circumstances, and you have a shrewd diplomat in shadows. You can attack with Queen of Thorns. Let's say power challenge, win unopposed power, then shrewd diplomat comes in with her ability and removes her from the challenge, and then you also get the 2 power from not having any characters.
Honestly, I can't wait. I can't wait for someone to do that, because it also doesn't seem too difficult to do. It's a 2-card combo, really, and it's not like you're really losing anything there. I guess you are. A shrewd diplomat isn't being used on your opponent, but I mean, it's not a major issue.
Yeah, I mean it stands the Queen of Thorns, so it does stand her, right? Yeah.
Yes, stand
so she can do another challenge after that, which is can be decent. Also, this interaction that I've written down here, Reek. Okay, let's say Reek, even in an opposed challenge, if you win with Reek and you take the character that was opposing, or if it's unopposed anyway, and you take someone else, then Reek changes control, and anytime during a challenge when a character changes control, it's immediately removed. So that would all happen before the challenge ends. And, there's a few like that.
Yeah, you're always finding the niche interactions. I love it in this FAQ. So yeah, make sure you check out the FAQ. We have put a lot of effort into it and finding all the little cheeky little things that you can technically do with these cards, on top of all the good stuff people will already do. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And speaking of that, I've just noticed here. So melee game, that's worth saying as well.
Yeah.
So if you have this revealed in melee, then there will be more opportunities, let's say, where there's a single participating character or something like that you can play offer of a pitch on, or just okay, that's a little bit convoluted. Characters, for instance, killing each other during a challenge. You can do that in Targaryen, for instance, and then you can just passively maybe grab some unexpected power. Could happen, who knows.
All right, let's go to the next faction. I think it's going to be Targaryen or Baratheon. Let's see which one it is. It is Baratheon.
Okay, so we have 2 interesting cards. Acolyte of the Shadow, which you will notice kind of mirrors Acolyte of the Flame. Has the same stats, same icons, and same trait. And the thing I love about this the most is that it's still at this point, after a year of testing, basically, it's impossible for me to say which one is better. So lately, with all of these open decklist events, like the Battle for the Seven Kingdoms and the World Cup, you can do a lot of testing in advance when you know the matchup, and you can see the biggest threats, and then having Acolyte of the Flame, you use it more than I think people think, and you can get rid of some of those big threats, and so annoying when it happens against you as well. I played the other day, and my opponent, I had my wall deck basically, Valyrian Steel, and my opponent just kept removing the wall and fresh recruits and cravens, basically all of the answers I could possibly have, and I just drew a bunch of crap from that. So it's proven to be a card that's difficult to replace. However, this one is a chart that in the right circumstances could have insight. Now, if you're not going to play the Baratheon cards that support that, so Banished from the Light or Dark and Full of Terrors, you are trusting to luck, of course. There is shadows going around, so decent chance to get it anyway, and if you don't, it's still only a chad, so whatever. But if the cards that are a little bit underplayed in Baratheon that I mentioned, that specifically put the opponent's cards into shadows, then of course it becomes guaranteed at that point if the timing works out. And yeah, chad with insight, can't really complain about that, can we?
No, it's you hit the nail on the head there. It was a card that we wanted to sort of reflect a bit, similar to Acolyte of the Flame, but we also just wanted to have a chud to help support the active R'hllor / Baratheon theme of chucking cards into shadows. So there is likely going to be a little bit more support of that in the future. So I do see this card growing along with the expanding card pool. At the moment, it's just a well-rounded card, and if you're missing draw in your deck, it is one of those options that you can choose. Whether it's the best option or not sure. It is still a 2x2 Bicon, so you have that going for you if that's the worst case scenario. It is also a cheap R'hllor for core Melisandre or other R'hllor mechanics that you have there. Yeah, it's one that's going to grow, I think.
Yeah, in melee, of course, the chances go up, so you could play that a little bit more reliably. Also, so we've seen, well, actually, in the World Cup, by far the most popular agenda choice is actually Brotherhood for Baratheon. So this is loyal, and whether you play Brotherhood or not, there are some decks that play the non-loyal package in Baratheon with Hollow Hill. So can't use it in that, but then on the other hand, loyalty itself has, of course, some advantages. We've seen Barafilti coming back recently in various forms. There was one, of course, in the Cottage Dalek. Probably not really looking for cards like this one because it didn't play Melisandre, but okay. And you remember, Steven, when Breaking Ties came out all those years ago, and some factions exploited it just obnoxiously. Targaryen did, and especially Martell and Stark did.
Yes.
And Baratheon at that time had their Robert and Stannis, and I think absolutely nothing cheap that was loyal. Now they would have this one and Bastard of Robert. So yeah, too bad Breaking Ties is not a thing anymore. Finally getting some loyal chats here.
Yeah. That was quite it felt like the Wild West days of of some of those cards, where now it's just Breaking Ties is just a completely different thing, which is a bit sad, but at the same time completely fair.
Yeah. Okay, and the other one is actually one of the most interesting cards in this whole pack. Probably it's which one was it that I said this about? Don't remember now, but it's one of those, maybe Taste the Blood. It's one of those flashy ones again that you could go entire games trying to trigger it and it doesn't happen, but then the possibility always there. So this one, if you're attacking with kings, which in Baratheon you have options, you can they have 3, and Renly works a little bit differently in different types of decks because he wants non-Baratheon cards with him, but the other 2, Stannis and Robert, you can fit in the same deck, and attacking with kings can happen reliably in Baratheon. And it's a 3-cost event, so very expensive, but doesn't kill, doesn't discard, doesn't put into shadows. It just takes, and it can take something permanently. Can take something really good, I guess, if the opponent walks into it. I don't know. You can't force the opponent to walk into it if you have 3 gold. You'd have to basically play reckless and what's the plot? Something besiege. I don't remember.
Besieged, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to do stuff like that. Which actually Argento, who tested this in one of the play testing events, he did play that and he got to the final. So, but I guess you could go the other way, right? And combine it with cards like Pinch of Powder, so that you punish the opponent if they under defend and punish if they put their strong characters into the challenge. I don't know. One of those that I don't think will ever be a really top card, but then it could be so fun to use, right? If you have this in hand and
Yeah, it feels like a high cost but also high reward card. Um, Both cost being the actual physical cost of 3 gold, but also the cost of requiring an attacking king character, and really requiring your opponent to defend with a character worth all of those costs. Um, it's a bit of a slim scenario in that retrospect, but if it does happen, that can be game changing. Um, you know, I could steal a 7 cost Tywin, and my game is completely flipped at that point. So I'm glad we didn't make this much easier than it actually is, but I also agree with you that I don't think it's going to be seen everywhere. It's going to be seen in scenarios where people think they can rectify those costs in some way, whether it being like some sort of challenge pool mechanics or uh, just having a consistent showing of kings, whatever it is. There needs to be something there to make this, an easier card for the player playing it.
yeah, in Greyjoy we see the Bloody Cup for 2 gold, and they have high road. Sometimes they just sit there. Targaryen as well with their 2 cost events. And then if the opponent has walked into it, that's when you trigger it basically, and otherwise it just stays there as econ. So that's a thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I've tested it a bit in various decks, just putting a copy in, see what happens, and never has happened yet. And now that it's
Really?
out, I actually did build a deck with it was Banner Kraken. I put Bloody Cups in and I said, okay, I'm going to play the Kings, attack with them, and then if they defend, I'll take their characters. If they don't defend, I'll play Bloody Cup on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
And they're
great.
both around the same cost as well. They're similar costs.
Yeah, it's not worked out in the couple of games I tried, but I think
Fair.
maybe a few months from now, when no one has played this and people forget, that's when we'll get our chance. I think.
That's when it will become strong.
Yeah, I
No
mean,
one
if
knows
if
it exists.
if people play it, then it loses value, right? Because it's you
Yeah.
need people to walk into it, and people walk into cards that are not often played, and then they just can't comprehend what happened. Since when does this exist, right?
Yeah. No, you're spot on. Yeah. Um, let's see how that happens. I want it to work, but we'll see.
Okay,
Um,
and then we have
do I need to spin the wheel or
no, it's just Targaryen left, and it's
Targaryen?
my favorite card, Arstan Whitebeard.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I think everyone knows by now that I think this is absolutely awful, unusable card. I've said it multiple times, but even the Targaryen players disagree with that. They're famously huge complainers. They don't like any of the cards released for Targaryen, but somehow, basically, there is some kind of consensus that Arstan is good. Great for setups. Okay, has that little tricky condition, but sometimes you get around it, and other times, okay, you just forget about him. He dies for a claim basically, and he served his purpose. And yeah, people seem to like him. People seem to play him. World Cup decks play him. There's one that plays him 3 times. Francis, who plays for the American team on this occasion, plays him 3 times and insists that he's a good card. And yeah, I guess I'll have to concede that I was a bit too harsh on him.
Yeah. with this one here, I also struggle to see how he is a bad choice. I can agree that he's not an incredibly good card, but I also just when a card is one cost, regardless of what else it's supplying, it's hard for that card to be bad. Or more specifically, when a character is one cost, it's very hard for that card to be bad. And in the worst case scenario, you drawing this card, it's a one cost three. It's a one cost character that can be killed for claim, but can also be just 3 strength for dominance. So it's hard for me to see this bad. I'm surprised that people are chucking 3 copies of him in a deck. That I am a little bit surprised about. But I guess if it's a deck that has enough lords and ladies, you've got Daenerys and you've got Khal Drogo or something like that quite consistently, then I can at least see how he provides you that value with that. I don't think the Barristan sell me condition will ever be met. I can't see any scenario why you would have both Arstan and Barristan in the same deck. But obviously it's there because it's an alter ego of his. So yeah, no, I think this card is incredible. It really reflects the polarizing cost curves that Targ has had as a consistent theme since core of having really strong 1 strength, 2 strength, some strength, 3 strength characters, but mostly 1 and 2, and then some strong 6 and 7 cost characters, but less in the middle. This is a real great example of that, I think, and you wouldn't see this sort of card in other factions.
Yeah, the condition Lord or Lady in Targaryen, in Mono Targaryen, is a bit tricky because basically there's Khal Drogo and Daenerys. I mean, you can play Viserys, and maybe you can find. I think Aegon also, right, is a lord, and is Magister Illyrio a lord? He shouldn't be, right?
I don't think he is. No.
He is actually. Hasn't been played in about 5 years, but okay. I guess if you really wanted Arstan, but his ability is not something that you need to be concerned with in deck building. I think he does block Barristan, which is unfortunate because that setup 1 coster and a 7 coster would work perfectly, but it doesn't now. So he is non-loyal, and there's no Tark condition here, so you can play him with. If you play this in Stark or in Bannerwolf, there will always be a Lord or Lady, and a lot of other factions where you can say the same, basically. So that's where Greyjoy would enjoy a 1 coster to set up along with their 7 costers, and they can use some of the Tark cards. They can use their Queen's Guard and stuff like that. So
yeah. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It is again similar to what we said with some of the other cards. It's one of the smaller cards in the cycle. I mean, it's doing something a little bit interesting, but it's not providing a whole lot. It's just a body. But I'm glad that I'm glad of how it's turned out in the end.
And a very important thing to note, so if you don't actually have a Lord or Lady, he cannot kneel. So if you have Hot Pie and want to kneel him for to gain 1 gold, you cannot.
Or damn it!
Reduce the cost, actually.
Not Hot Pie.
And you also can't kneel Boots because he's not a character. He is a companion attachment. So Hot Pie has not got better with this pack, unfortunately.
We need more Hot Pie reviews, I think. Each pack we should determine whether he's better or not.
And we end with Summerhall. Now this is I always think that art that has fire on it, like I think Funeral Pyre is one example, never looks that good to me, but for some reason this one looks incredible. The Targaryen version of Summerhall. And it's a card that will be, I don't know, I don't imagine it will be well received by non-Tark players, or I guess Tark players will complain that this is not efficient enough, and everyone else will complain about getting their character skilled especially through something passive. I mean, if you put them in a challenge, then it works along with any other burn, but just passively with Dragon is no slave, that's the concern. Not actually a burn card, so this is worth noting here that you can save this normally. It's not an ongoing terminal burn effect that keeps killing the character, so that won't work. But yes, additional kill effect, and we saw in round 1 of the World Cup Francis using this in his deck, and looked alright. But I have tested this myself as well in one of the playtesting events, somehow convinced myself to play Targaryen, and I actually thought it was pretty fair. Did some work, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, we've been trying to, and this started around about the time of Field of Fire. We've been trying to add um, some more burn tech to the game without supporting the already existing good burn package. And I think this is a card that sort of, speaks towards that. It's encouraging non-terminal burn effects to become not to become terminal, but to still provide a level of kill. I know a few people, when this was first announced in playtesting, a few people thought that it was terminal burn and were saying how broken it was. But upon realizing that it is just a kill that can be saved, um, I've seen a few people's opinions changing and saying that, that actually seems kind of fair. So it's good to see that people are, not a lot of people are hating on it once they understand how it actually works. Um, and I'm happy that we're still able to provide some support to card types that people find quite negative in a way that people can still agree with and understand. Like, I know there's going to be, I think there's maybe 2 more cards coming out in the cycle that will support burn in some way. Technically 3 if we count the attachment, 3 spears. But all 3 of them aren't terminal burn. So you will still require something such as Summerhall to actually kill the character. And I think that's important at the moment because we did notice there were a lot of cards, such as like Burn Danny, that were just too easy in actually killing people. And so we think this is a fair middle ground of having some very key cards that can do the killing, such as Summerhall and 7-cost Drogon, for example. But then a plethora of other cards that fit other mechanics that can just reduce the strength to get them to that point. So this is a good card in that way, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Okay, and I guess that's it for Children of Summer. And maybe we can have a look at all the cards now and discuss, like we always do, our favorites and potentially problematic cards. So if you have something in mind, you can start, and I'll have a brief look to see.
Yeah. So I think my favorites. I'd actually have quite a few favorites in this one. I'll be entirely honest, but I think my favorite is probably going to be Taste the Blood, just because of the interesting mechanics it can bring out to a trait or a deck type that isn't really supported enough. I really hope that it breathes some life into cards like Winterfell Castle and 5-cost Bran. And I guess there is also Blood Raven that's also been released recently in True Telling. It's something interesting to bring those cards, and I really hope people play around with it because it could get to a competitive level. It's just there's no real incentive to do so right now. But then an honorable mention maybe to Chivalry of the South as well, just because I feel like feels like a really well designed card, and the artwork as well turned out so good.
Yeah, I do love Taste the Blood. It sounds really fun, but I don't know if I can bring myself to choose a star card as my favorite. Baratheon cards actually pretty interesting. Okay, one chart that I guess it's always kind of bland, and an interesting ability on the event that maybe I don't know if I'll be able to use it because it calls for basically a constructed deck that does attacking in challenges, and I prefer to do more control stuff. I think I'll have to be a bit predictable here and just go for boots. The cat attachment.
Yes.
I've been enjoying the cats, as you know, in Lanny Brotherhood that I've been playing for something like 3 years now.
Yeah.
In various periods basically, and just that theme of getting a Voltron shard basically, as I call it, or several of them, and you have Sir Pounce that lets you attack multiple times with the same character. You have Lady Whiskers that does the same, not quite as efficiently, but does do basically the same thing, and you can have Boots to give them renown. And I've been doing that in Brotherhood a little bit, and if Leonard has found a way to do that in Cohort with just looping the attachments around that, I think that sounds like a really fun thing to do, and I would love to explore that a little bit after the World Cup as well. So I think Boots for me. And if I had to pick a second one, I think then I'll have to agree with your call. As my second pick would be Taste the Blood, just because it is the flashiest. Not sure if I'll ever actually play it. Perhaps. Honestly, it makes me want to play that kind of Stark rather than what they usually do, simply because it's something a bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the same thing for me. As I said, I playtested it quite a bit just because it felt like something different that you could do. And yeah, I actually felt that way with a lot of decks when playtesting this cycle. There were a few Tyrell decks as well that I was testing for cards that haven't really been released yet. So I'm excited to get into that as well. But this one was, my focus was Stark with playtesting, and I loved it.
Okay, anything that you see as potentially problematic here?
Well, if we exclude Ralph,
Okay.
as we, I mentioned earlier to you before our call that I feel like the Greyjoy Winter deck has always been a decent deck. It hasn't necessarily been S tier, but it's been a good deck. We've seen it, getting high rankings in Starlake and all that. But then this Ralph is just itself a good card. It's sort of tipped the whole deck over. So I don't think it's necessarily Ralph as the problem, but rather Ralph within a deck that was already good. So if we exclude him, because there's been a lot of discussion about him lately, I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm just going to say at some point I think the old Hawk is going to be a problem. Some point. That's what I'm saying. Going against the grain, going against Martell here.
Yeah, it's problematic in the sense that this could become consistent, right? And then good players will be able to win with it, and you can just watch their ridiculous strength and mass renown. I think that's probably a good call. For me, I'm looking at cards that will be basically disliked due to their basically how they work. So Summerhall, we mentioned that when something gets killed passively, people are not going to like it, but I don't know if that can turn really into a problematic deck more than anything that already is happening. So not sure about that one. And same with the Moondor. If someone's going to play this with Victarion and just get an extra kill, could be disliked. But it's been out now for a while. We're not doing this review immediately after the pack came out, so people have had opportunity to play it and test it.
Yeah.
And basically collectively they've decided that for the World Cup not worth exploring this. Maybe in time get stronger. And in playtesting I complained a lot about timing. Basically I thought it was crazy that he has this. He's like a walking Duran's game that can just close games with power surge, and he's now a Tricon with Intimidate as well. But even here I have to concede that maybe I overreacted. Maybe it's if someone does try to do a combo with him to win basically in one go or in a short period of time, it seems like it would be the result of some creative, basically well-earned play rather than something problematic that will turn into one of those combo decks from the past that you could just win immediately. I don't think that's at the moment is really a thing. So
Yeah, it's whether that can become consistent or not. That the issue is if it's consistency in the deck or consistency in the player's skill level. If the player is just really good at the game, they should be allowed to do well with him, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so my prediction would probably be that none of the cards will be as strong as, or as, let's say, immediately in need of addressing than Ralph Canning. I think he still stands out. There's potentially problematic, potentially hated cards in this pack, but nothing too drastic. I don't think that will be needed to deal with them.
I do still hope that we wait a little bit, because I do. It's a similar thing with the Crag, for example. I do think that Ralph is or Greyjoy Winter is just being played a lot right now as well, and there aren't really no one's really kitted against it. So it's been sort of a combination of a new card, strong card being added to that deck, and no one being prepared to go against that deck. That has made it really problematic at the moment. So it's just I'd like to see if that strength holds out like beyond the World Cup, I guess. But we'll see. I hope that we don't see a restriction this early after release, because so much can change, in a few months.
Yeah, Online Worlds is coming up, I guess, in less than 2 months from now, so there will be another restricted list before that. And in the previous two years that we had this event, was always one dominant deck. So 2 years ago, Greyjoy showed up in numbers, Greyjoy Filthy, just dominating, and last year it was Martell, Knights of the Hollow Hill. So that type of event with that particular field, that's I think will be similar again, basically the same group of players. They tend to focus on whatever is perceived to be the best, and if that's Greyjoy Winter, then I think we'll see it come out in force, and that will be I guess a true telling whether Ralph Kelling is a bit much, or maybe things quiet down a bit and people don't trust in that deck for the Online Worlds. But I think if he's crazy in that one, then he will be dealt with probably.
Yes, probably. I think that does it.
Yes, so this is it for Children of Summer. So once again, the release article you can find here. I will put a link in the description, and you can look forward to the next pack. So nothing announced here yet. You will see it as number 3 in the Mists of Memory cycle. So Steven, anything you can tell us about the next one?
Not really in detail, but I would say similar to the previous 2 packs, like just expect something approximately 2 months after the previous release. This pack, I believe, was released early last month. I'm just trying to remember the exact release date that we had for it.
It's mid-March.
18th.
Yeah.
18th, I think it was March. Yeah. So expect something around about 2 months after that. It's all based on artists and artworks. It's the most difficult part. So I'll make the usual request of if anyone is interested in helping us with getting these cards to release and preventing any delays, which is very likely. Feel free to reach out. We can always use help, especially in the arts department, mostly with finding commissioning art or doing a little bit of AI art when we need to. We can take all the help we get, and if you want things to come out quicker, come forward. We'd love your help.
Yes, and when the pack does come out, you can expect another review, hopefully. And let that be it for tonight. So once again, Stephen, thank you for being with me on this one.
As always, thank you for having me. Love these.
And to all of our viewers, thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.